Lori.
You're just talking about this. I have given this a lot, but I'm most nervous when I give it to my peers. So bear with me. And I don't know that I like this up here. I move it. We'll see. But then I move, I walk around, and then that'll drive everybody crazy. But we'll just start here. See how we do. All right. So I left this presentation as if this is how I give it to parents. Because it's just nice. I just think it's nice as professionals to see how I teach parents, and then you could do the same thing. So as I start to talk to you guys like your parents, sorry, it's just sort of my fallback. Yeah, 25 years of infant toddler, but really I'm just 30. Kidding. So 3 things about sleep. We're going to talk about self-regulation, which is we all know is co-regulation. Getting your child to sleep, and then how to maintain that sleep. And we'll talk about the medical piece of that also. Oh, you probably don't want me to move very much.
You're
I'm
fine.
a mover and a
You're
shaker.
good. I'll follow you.
Okay. All right. So the Academy of Pediatrics recommends that you share a bedroom with your baby, not the same sleep surface, for the first 6 months. Room sharing this decreases the risk of SIDS by as much as 50%. So we all know we have families that co-sleep, and they co-sleep for a million reasons. And that's what I say. I'm going to walk in and they're going to say, well, we're co-sleeping. I'm going to say, tell me why. What's the purpose? Because they could have 5 kids in 2 bedrooms. So there could not be some choices. So we know it's not safe. We need to ethically, I firmly believe that we need to let them know it's not safe. That is not what we should be doing. They should not be co-sleeping. And I just think really it's important for us to let them know that, because we don't want to be liable for anything that happens. So just telling them that co-sleeping is not safe, and let's work to a different solution. How can we help you through that? What are your goals today? What do you want to get out of this? It's kind of where I start. Academy of Pediatrics emphasizes the need for infants to sleep on their backs on a flat, non-inclined surface without soft bedding. I mean, if you say that sentence to a family, they're going to get right off the bat that they should not be in the cozy bed with 2 adults. So important, huge information. And I feel like they changed the sleeping in the bedroom. It used to be a year, and now it's 6 months. I personally like that better, because it's hard to have your kids that are starting to, they know where we are and calling for us and hollering and all those things. It's hard to have them in the same bedroom. They do not recommend weighted sleep sacks or weighted blankets in the bed. So we know our population has some extenuating circumstances, and we kind of just have to roll with what's going to work and try different things, making sure that we are giving them the correct documentation, but then we're going to go from there. Swaddling when they're rolling over, no more swaddling. I feel like that's a hard thing to talk parents into, because then you lose the good sleep. But swaddling with arms out, you could swaddle with arms out. There's all kinds of things. Then people go to sleep sacks, but it's hard. So even when they're close to rolling, they're starting to get, well, they're not all the way over. Well, then they need to be out of the swaddle. If they're starting to get to their side and not yet to their stomach, we need to get them out of the swaddle. All right. This comes straight from Children's Mercy Sleep Clinic. It's not just a break from being awake. It's an active state, which is necessary for renewing physical, emotional, and mental health. They can be respiratory, neurological, or behavior, but it affects a child's mood and performance. It affects our mood and performance as adults, and we're regulated. So imagine the kids. Okay, so here you go. Yes, I am that old. I am telling parents they have to change their behavior, because they have to. If they want something different to happen, the parents have to change what they're doing. They have to at least try. And so part of it today is, how do we get them to try? How do we talk them into that? I think that's an important piece. So I will hit the medical piece. We talk about that at team meetings a lot. Not a lot, but sometimes. But I hit that at the end. All right. This is Tina Payne Bryson's and Dan Siegel's slide. I talk about self-regulation and self-calming because if kids can't self-regulate during the day, we can't expect them to regulate in their crib by themselves in the dark. So we have to practice that piece first. So I talk about this piece first in this always, because it's important. And it's important that they know that they can't just, I mean, if they want to do cry it out, they can let them cry, but if they don't know how to cry and calm or do anything by themselves, then they're never going to do it at night. So self-regulation is a lifelong skill. It helps us toddlers. I was walking my son, one of my kids, through it when he was in middle school. Like, he was all hot and bothered because somebody was teasing somebody else. And I was like, you need to just say whatever in your head. And so I'd call him some name and he'd be like, I'm like, I literally was doing this, whatever, because that was when that was all. And he was like, oh yeah, I got to do that. I'm like, yes, you've got to do that. So if you start when they're little, it never goes away. You still have to do it. It is going to help us learn to sleep. The Journal of Developmental Pediatrics talks about self-soothers are better sleepers. It's obvious. If they can do it on their own, when they're awake and alert, they're going to be better at it at night when they're tired or when they wake up in the middle of some sleep cycle. I feel like it's hard. And one thing I tell parents is that I feel like parents are into this mode of they have to meet every need and nobody can fuss and nobody can fuss and nobody can fuss. It's not helping our kids. We all know that. So I kind of talk about and I'll talk a little bit about it today, but we talk about like we have to practice. We have to practice a little, like of them going, but and then how are we going to help them then calm back down? It's a huge piece. It translates to sleep. So we need to learn, we need to teach our parents what their kids cries. Sometimes parents don't know that their children have different cries for different things. And they might know those cries when they're awake and it's 2 p.m. But when it's 2 a.m., they forget to listen for what cry that might be. Are they just fussing? Are they hungry? Is their leg stuck through the rung of the crib? Those are going to be different cries all the way around. And I think we need to talk about that with families, because if they wake up in the middle of the night and they hear something, then you need to first think this is twofold. First, we're going to teach them how to wait and hear the cry. So wait is huge, because we're not going to run right in unless it's blood curdling scream that I'm hurt and my leg's stuck in the rung. Then we're going immediately. I think it's huge. It's different when they're infants and toddlers, because when they're toddlers, they're going to be talking to us about it and calling us and all the things. Daytime calming is best to practice. Don't practice at night. Psychology Today says 12 touches helps with self-regulation through the age of 17. Can you imagine touching your 17-year-old 12 times a day? They'd probably say, leave me alone. But I talk about diaper changes do not count. And if you're just lifting them up to putting them in a high chair, that doesn't count. If it's a ooey gooey diaper change, fine. It needs to be, you are helping them when they are calm, when they are peaceful. You're giving them nice, positive feedback. It's going to keep them in Tina Payne Greison's green zone, and then they're going to be able to learn. Turn off technology. This literally comes straight out of the magazine. Turn off the technology and play. And so I know some of our parents don't play, but if we encourage 12 touches and the kids are happier, they are going to at least go check in while they're cleaning or cooking or whatever. They might go check in. All right, so birth to 4 months. We are not working on self-calming. We are going to those babies. 4 to 6 months, you can establish some wait time. You can sing. I tell parents to sing a song. The child's in the family room and they're starting to fuss, start to sing, and then you're going to be able to finish unloading the dishwasher. So those are some of the things, how to extend that. What can you do to let them know you're still there? I'm here and I'm coming. How are we going to do that? And parents are like, well, I can't sing. Like, they don't care. It's your voice. It's the parent's voice. That's what they want. That's the calming piece. 6 to 15 months. I love practice leaving the room before that stranger anxiety happens. Walk around the island, walk around the chair, tell them where you're going. Play peekaboo, like we play peekaboo behind a blanket. Do it behind a couch or a door jamb and go high and go low and all the different things. So they're used to finding you, but they're not as alarmed when you're not there. See, I'm already talking to you like parents. So when tantrums start, that is a hard piece because they're going to be mad during the day. The families, some of our families now who don't let them fuss or have a tantrum or any of those things, it's hard to talk families into this. I like to tell parents to wait till it go from a mad cry to a sad cry, because we don't want them to be by themselves until they're quiet. We want them to be calmer. We're teaching that process, and we have to teach parents how to teach their kids to be calm. I try to sell it with the fact that we want, they don't want to go to kindergarten or their first day of preschool and be the one on the floor having a temper tantrum there. We'd rather practice at home, because then they're going to know what to do when they have to wait for the blue truck, when they don't get it right away. So I love to practice that. Or when the purple cup is at daycare, we're not going to get the cup at daycare. I would don't go get the cup. And then communication frustration peaks. Help, please. You know, we're going to give them those words. We all know that. If we provide the words for them, they're going to know that we're there to help them and that we're going to help them. And if we practice those things, when the block tower falls over and we say, uh-oh, you know, I'm teaching, this is a huge piece to teach the parents before then you say, okay, put them in bed and let them fuss. We can't do that. They don't know how to fuss when they're wide awake and calm down. We have to work on it first during the day. The goal is to keep them in the green zone. So so when kids are mad and they're having a tantrum, just because this is how I give it to parents, I'm going to give it the same way. So they're mad, they don't have the purple cup, purple cup's at daycare, and they're on the kitchen floor, on the tile, the stove is on, all the things, they're not in a safe place. And they're hopping mad. I'm going to move that child. I'm going to say, I'm sorry you're mad, face to face. I'm right at their level. I'm going to move the child someplace safe and say, you can be mad right here. I'll help you when you're ready. And we're moving them from me to this table. We're not moving them any farther than a body length apart. They need us. This is co-regulation, not self-regulation. They are too little for a long time. My son needed help in 7th grade saying whatever, right? So part of that is that piece is important, that they're close. But so then when they're start to come down, I always say, so they're hopping mad at a 10, they come down to an 8, you can move in, I'm moving in, Meredith. She can be happy to sit in front row. So I'm going to give them this body language. I'm sorry you're mad. I'll help you when you're ready. I'm here. I'm not saying, oh, you're so mad. I'm going to do it this way. I'm present. I've gotten closer. If they like their head rubbed, won't rub your head, or that like their feet touched or their back rub, you can move in and do that, because we are helping them learn to calm down. We are not just waiting for them to be quiet, because that's not okay. They're not ready. Social, emotionally, kids our age are not ready for that. They need help. So then as they come farther down, you know, they start going, then I call it chest to chest. Then you could go chest to chest. I'm so sorry. You're going to support that. You're going to move in. Sorry you were sad. Your purple cup's at daycare. Here's a red cup. You can have it when you're ready. Then you've helped that child come down. You are teaching. You're moving in as an 8 at an 8 because they don't know how to do it yet. And then the goal is you might wait the next time until they're at a 7, and then you're going to move in. But you're never not going to move in. You're moving in to help them because they need the help. Well, we have to teach them during the day so that they can go to sleep at night when they wake up in the middle of the night and we're not there. All right. Questions about that? Okay. Typical sleep. Here's a chart of typical sleep. I kind of compiled this from a bunch of different settings. Really, 11 to 15, 11 to 14. It just, obviously you sleep less the older you get, and when naps start, like at nighttime. And naps are all over the board. 0 to 3 months. I feel like there are some parents that would like help at 3 months because their child is not sleeping, but they are not supposed to be sleeping yet. That's just not it's just not a thing. They're not developmentally ready to have a consistent sleep schedule. Naps are going to be all over the board, and it just is developmentally typical. 4 to 8 months, 3 naps a day ish. I love the wake windows. I think are huge. The first nap, an hour and a half after waking for a 4 to 8 month old. Then 2 to 3 hours later, and then between and then at 8 months, typically transition to 2 naps. 9 to 14 months. Now, you look at this, and I just left a house with Isabel, and that's sort of what I suggested, but sort of not, because that child's having seizures. They might need a cat nap. So nobody fits in a box. I feel like that one of the questions I get asked a lot from families is how to combine, how to go like from 2 naps to 1 nap. And so say the first nap is from 10 to 11:30, and the next nap is at 2:30 or 2. You're going to bump the first nap back like 15 minutes and maybe wake them up a little early. 15 minutes. I love the 15-minute window because it doesn't affect a ton of the child's rest at that point. And then you're going to bump the second nap up. So you're going to move that nap to 1:45. And then you're slowly squish those naps together. I do not love to go in and wake a child. I like to open the door and cough or sneeze, help the dog bark, whatever you need to do to help, because then they startle awake, and then parents can go in and be like, oh, look at you, you're awake. Time to get up. So it's softer that way, as opposed to us just, I know we're sort of helping them wake up, but it's not us going in and there and, get up, it's time to wake up. Not till they're teenagers, you don't have to do that. And I think the hard thing for our childcare kids, it's really hard because like my kids were done napping at 3, and I cannot imagine them sitting on a cot for an hour and a half. I think that struggle is real for parents and for the kids, because then those kids nap for an hour and it takes them a long time to fall asleep. So they're not waking them up until 3 o'clock. And then parents want to put them to bed at 7:30. And a good rule of thumb for our older toddlers, 2 to 3, 4 or 5 hours between naps, between wake times. So, I mean, it just is different. So then those kids aren't going to go to bed. They don't need to go to bed at 7. If they're up at 3:30, 7 o'clock could very well be way too early to put that child to bed. And parents hate to hear that, because those kids have worked really hard all day long too. So they're fussy then. They don't know what to do. They don't know which end is up. They're just exhausted because they've had to be good all day. That's hard. But once you kind of talk a parent into doing that, then they're like, oh my gosh, bedtime was so much easier. I didn't have to work at bedtime for an hour. And then they really do have their evening. That is one thing too that I find is helpful selling some of this to parents is time together or time to yourself at night in the evening. It's huge. This is a sample schedule from Taking Care of Babies. I love this. I go to these a lot, and I do these a lot, and I still go to those. But I have parents that say they pull these up and they can't fit their kid to that schedule. Well, we're not fitting a kid to a schedule. Every child has their own needs of sleep. Twins, right? I have twins. One cried all day as an infant and slept really hard at night, and the other one hardly required sleep. So we were doing 2 different things in our house with the same exact age child. And it just is hard. So while these are great and they're nice to refer to, we're not going to just cookie cutter our kid into this little schedule. So I spent a lot of time in homes helping families sort of navigate, what time did your child wake? How is this going to differ? Because sometimes, like the dad today, well, sometimes we have to wake him up at 6 to get up and go to work. Sometimes he's just up, or sometimes he'll sleep till 7 or 7:30. Well, yeah. Welcome to children. Welcome to babies. It's a 14-month-old, and if he's up all night, he's gonna maybe sleep till 7. And we'll talk about that too, because in order to get on a consistent schedule, wake times need to be similar. Not necessarily for a kid with seizures. I think that could be all over the board, because if they're having seizures at night, that's a whole different ballgame. But a child who may have a speech delay and is having sleep issues, and that's the only thing they have going on, that child's wake time needs to be similar. Or if it's a parent that stays at home and they don't care if their day starts at 7 or starts at 8, then the wake window still needs to be 4 hours. And while they're sleep training, if they're up in the middle of the night doing what we'll talk about next, they still need to be up at 7 o'clock. They don't get to sleep in till 10 and then start the day, because then you're at 1 in the morning trying to get kids to sleep and they're still going to be up all night long. So that wake time is really important. It needs to be similar every day, even on the weekends. And then once they're sleep trained, then there's wiggle room. Once you've kind of gone through and they really are on a good schedule, there's certainly wiggle room for families. All right. I also like quiet time. Like my kids quit napping at 3 and I thought I was gonna die, because you're like, no break, there's no break. I love quiet time, and like at our house, we didn't have the TV on very much. So our kids got to go sit on our bed and watch Barney. That's how old I am. And so they're like 20 minutes. And then the rule was, I love that phrase. No, anybody who hasn't heard that. The rule is you have to stay on the bed. If you get off the bed, the TV goes off. That was the rule at my house. So the rule is you have to stay on the bed. So they would stay on the bed and the Barney episode would go off because it wasn't on an endless loop. I'm sure it was on a VHS tape, and it would go fuzzy. And then I would hear these little pitter patter feet that go to the playroom. And I was like, oh, this is the best thing ever. But they really do need to stop. And we're going to have to help them stop, because lots of kids are just always in perpetual motion. One of mine would have stopped and one of mine never would have if we hadn't had some set quiet time. If they're on the iPad all day, that kind of quiet time doesn't work. Obviously, you have to work on that. Let's see. Next. Okay. When to get started. It can begin about 4 months of age. Now, oftentimes at 4 months, there's a sleep regression. So they might start sleeping really well at about 3.5 months, and at 4 months, there's often a sleep regression. And I'm happy to come help you through it, or this will help too. Sometimes you have to wait that out, and you just have to work your way through that. I would say at 4 months, we're talking more about a bedtime routine and the times where you try to do the times similar and those kinds of things, more than they're going to sleep through the night. You cannot sleep train when they're going through separation anxiety. That is not fair to that child. So that happens, we know, around 8 months, and then again around 18 months. I always say they're not sleeping. They haven't slept that now, so they can wait another month. I do not. If a child is crying when a parent walks out of the room, they are not ready for a parent when they're awake and alert. It's just not fair. It's too hard for them social emotionally. Sometimes it's harder as they get older, but it's never too late. So when I give this to parents as teachers groups, the parents are like, my 4-year-old or my 6-year-old. I'm like, yes, the same rules apply. They really do. All right, so this is where I start with my capital letters. Can you tell what I think is important? You'll see some more later, and you guys will all be going, yeah. Everybody has to be ready. Everybody. It takes a lot of patience, and you have to be consistent. There has to be consistency. And I'd say it's not about mom and dad have to read the book the same way. It's about the routine needs to be the same. I saw a little girl, Miss B. I have a video of her later. She's probably, I have no idea, she's probably 7 now. But she was not sleeping. Mom was going in the bathroom, turning off the lights, turning on the fan, and she would rock her for an hour and a half before she would fall asleep. Then she would get up, walk in the hallway. I'm not sure how it all happened because there's a 3-year-old also. Walk her to her bedroom, put her in the pack and play. And if Miss B woke up, the whole thing had to start over. Not easy. So I go in for the initial visit, and then come to find out it was in the summer, and then mom's going back to work. So grandma's there for childcare. Grandma cannot carry Miss B up the stairs, so Miss B passes out wherever they are in the playroom. And then mom's in the bathroom rocking for an hour and a half. And then dad would get home from work at like 3 a.m. and Miss B would wake up and then she'd be in bed with them. None of that's okay. It's not fair for her. Mom wanted that to be the solution. Like, I need to learn all these times how to get her to go to sleep. That's not fair to Miss B. It's not consistent. There's not one thing consistent about it. I'm not going to teach grandma how to do it in the playroom downstairs when she's passing out on the couch, and then make Miss B go into bed by all her in the pack and play. She was still in the parents' room for health reasons, and teach her how to fall asleep then, and then allow her to be pulled into the bed. I literally took a break. I just said, you have to wait until your schedules are better. There's nothing about this that's okay. She's not going to be able to do this. So we waited, and she turns out her ferritin was low. But also mom would stand outside and play a game of Candy Crush on her phone. Wait for her. She was fussing. And she was like, I did it. I played one whole level, like one tiny game. And then she got back in the bedroom. I was like, that's hilarious, but it's great. You aren't sleeping now anyway. They have to wait. It is not going to happen overnight. All right. Getting started. So I encourage parents to write down their sleeping and eating patterns. That's huge. It's really important, because if they're switching from purees to solids, we don't really know how much food they're getting. Our dietitian says, I do say that in my presentation. Our dietitian says, but no, we need to make sure they're getting enough calories. Are they waking up twice in the middle of the night because they really didn't eat very much of their dinner because the dog ate it all and we don't know? We have to watch for that. How much are they getting during the day? Are they not getting enough, like even milk? Are they not finishing their bottles during the day because they're overtired and falling asleep? And then they're waking up 3 times for a bottle in the middle of the night. It just all snowballs tonight. And nobody wants to be up feeding bottles in the middle of the night. And pediatricians are saying, they're good. They should be sleeping through the night. And then they're like, see ya. You've had your 10 minutes in my office. Bye. You know, they're like, now what? Start with what's successful. Miss B's mom, 1 level Candy Crush, 1 little game. She was so proud of herself when we got back to really doing some sleep training. They need to have good bedtime routines. Good. So bedtime routines do not need to be 30 and 45 minutes. There's no reason. If bedtime is taking, I always tell parents 20 minutes. If they're not falling asleep in 20 minutes, you need to stop and get up and do something else. Everybody's up, including the child, and try again 45 minutes later. Everybody's frustrated. And then these parents are like, oh, and the kids know it's just not okay. So we need to make sure that that's something that happens. Here's my more capital letters. Do not be a pacifier. And that is breastfeeding, bottle feeding, or rocking. That counts as a pacifier. All those people, Miss B's mom was becoming a pacifier. I think that is, I just have the parents who are nursing on demand and are just literally nursing all night long. And the child will roll over and they're literally just, it's a comfort feed. They're not nursing. They're not getting, and that's what I ask. Do you feel like you're nursing for nutrition or you're nursing for comfort? And that is a hard question to ask, but I think it's important. It has to be asked. Because then they're also going to say, but I can't sleep. Yeah, I know you can. All right, cry it out. I probably have 1% of families that do cry it out. It is not, nobody wants their kids to cry, and that's fine. The other sort of method like this is Ferber's method, where they cry for 5 minutes, or you let them cry for 5 minutes and go in, and let them cry for 10 minutes and go in, 15, 20. I do not love that. I don't think that supports children's social emotional well-being. I think it teaches kids how to cry harder to get their parent to come. I just think it's almost backwards. Now I have families that love it, and they're doing it they did it with their first 2 kids, and they're doing it with their third, and then it's not really working. It's okay. If it's been successful for them, go for it. But it's just not something I prefer. Cry it out. It's faster, it's harder. If you have to have a good bedtime routine, you cannot do this before 6 months of age. Pediatricians do not recommend cry it out before 6 months. If a family has adopted a child, that child needs to be in the home for at least 6 months before they would try cry it out. Lots of crying. We did this with one of mine that didn't need much sleep, and I say we, and it wasn't we, it was my husband, because I stood in the driveway and cried to my mother on the phone. It took an hour and a half the first night, took 40 minutes the next night, and 10 minutes from then on out. It's not, it was harder on me, it's harder on the parents than it is on the child. My son does not remember that I let him cry in his crib. But there needs to be a good social emotional attachment for families too. So if families are going to try that, happy bedrooms. You need families. I would encourage families to go play in the kids' bedrooms. If they're only there at night and nighttime is hard, go play. Make it fun. If they're putting laundry away, bring the child in there with them with some toys and have a great time in there. Why not? Make it a happy place. The other thing I like are cues for the time it's bedtime. Opening the blinds. When they wake up, you're going to open the blinds and the child's going to do it with you. When they're going to bed, you're going to close the blinds. I think it's a nice routine. It's a physical cue that it's time to go to bed. I had a family that used to say, so they did cry it out, and she used to say, "We'll nurse when the sun shines." Like that was just her comment. She wrote that down. I thought that was cute. So lots of families like to go in, if they're going to do cry it out, lots of families like to go in one time and check and make sure they're okay. But that means if they're going to do cry it out, that's fine. But then they can't go in a second time. And if the child wakes up at 2 a.m., they can go in one time and then they don't go in again. And then they're going to wake up at 4 and then they're going to wake up. So that it has to be consistent no matter what happens. So if they're going to go in once when they cry or once when they like initially at bedtime, they're going to have to do the same thing at 2, 4, 6 nap time. Absolutely. Every sleep time needs to be consistent. All right. The no cry method. Lots of this information comes from the No Cry Sleep Solution. There's a couple other, it's on the end of this thing. It's longer but gentler. Most families choose this way. Bedrooms have to be safe. Charlie's House is our friend. They will give us all kinds of things. Especially for toddlers who are going to be on a mattress on the floor, everything needs to be against a wall, secured on a wall. I have families who have lined their hallways with furniture, all kinds of things for a month until those kids that are in toddler beds have figured out that they need to stay in bed and they've learned how to fall asleep. You need to have a good routine again. I'm going to say that again. And I love the blinds. Okay. So if you are nursing or if you have families nursing or bottle feeding your children to sleep, the goal is to not let the child fall asleep on the breast or the bottle. We want to stop before that. So if they're nursing or bottle feeding, that suckling pattern is going to slow. And then they speed up and then that pattern slows again. You know that child, that's sort of we want to make sure that they're watching that. So as the suckling pattern slows, they're going to remove the child from the breast or the bottle. If they're breastfeeding, physical cue, put the shirt down. Bottle feeding, you're going to move the bottle, and then you're going to stand up and go over to the crib. And you're going to put them, or sleeping service, whatever it is, you're going to put them in their crib. And most likely kids are going to then, if they've not ever done this before, they're going to cry immediately. Lots of them do. What I encourage families to do is try to pat that child the rest of the way to sleep, whether they're on their tummy or their back, anything that would be helpful for that. And then if they cry and the families know they're not going to do it again, you're going to repeat it a second time. So you're going to do it 2 times. So then you would get the child back out of their crib. You would give them a little bit more bottle until that suckling pattern slows, or let them nurse again until that suckling pattern slows, and you're going to put them in bed again. You're going to do that twice. On the 3rd time, you can rock, if they can rock or bottle feed, or nurse or bottle feed them clear to sleep. What that's doing is, if these kids are the ones that are up all night long, so if they're up twice in the middle of the night, that's 4 times of practice, and then they're going to have nap and the initial bedtime. So that's 8 practices in one day of getting in my crib when I am just barely awake. So then the goal would be, I always tell parents to do that for 2 weeks. And then the goal is to do it when they're a little more awake. You put them in bed a little more awake and a little more awake. each cycle. So you can do it, once they've learned it initially, I find that families can do it 3 or 4 nights again, a little more awake, and then that process is a little faster because they've learned that initial, oh, I'm okay here. Because then when they wake up in the middle of the night, the dad today was like, oh, he can't go back to sleep because he never falls asleep in his crib. He always falls asleep in my arms. It's different. The difference, he's falling asleep differently from when he's waking up in the middle of the night. He has no idea how to go to sleep by himself. Any questions about that? Yeah.
Do you find that kids who are nursed or bottle fed to sleep, does having to have like a good burping ever play into whether they're sleeping well or not? Or what happens if they're trying to do this method that you're talking about, but they need a burp?
So when they're drowsy, those kids, that's a great question. When they're drowsy, those kids that need to burp, I that time, because families are like, if they're sitting in a chair, the other thing is this routine needs to happen in the bedroom. This entire nursing feeding routine before they go to bed should happen in the bedroom. So they're already in the bedroom in a chair and they need to burp. So there's that slowing down. So then I would be doing the burping, while you're walking to the crib, because you're already moving them and jostling a little bit because you're getting up from a chair and moving to the crib. So I love to burp then, and then you stand there and you can feel that, they kind of get a little heavy, that sweet, yummy, and then put them in the bed. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yeah.
Do you modify this for kids who are on reflux protocol? You have to be upright for 30 minutes?
Yeah, so same deal. So yes, so if the parent has to, so kids that are on reflux meds, sometimes I recommend they feed not in the bedroom. And then because they're gonna sit up and if it's a baby, the babies are gonna fall asleep when the babies are tired. So I almost wait until, sometimes those families wait until they're a little longer before they do sleep training. So that because if they fall asleep and they're upright for 30 minutes here, it's gonna be too hard to. But same deal. Sometimes families that have to be, the kids have to be upright, sometimes literally just moving them. So if families are holding them and they're falling asleep, sometimes doing that routine for those kiddos, not in the bedroom, and then walking up to the bedroom, and it wakes them up enough just to be awake, not alert, but awake. But then you're putting them in their crib and there's a little bit of, they're almost in that state of almost asleep. Does that make sense? Somebody had a question here. Yeah.
Did you say you start this at 6 months? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Like 4 to 6 months. It just varies on the child. If like 4 months old sometimes can still be all over the board and like napping 20 minutes here and an hour here and then 2 20-minute naps. So they can try that at 4 months, but I would be quicker to pick a 4-month-old up than I would be a 6-month-old for sure. Yeah, Laura.
This is a different family. If the mom right now is holding the child for nap time, and we talked through this morning and trying to put her down, did the 2 times, on the 3rd time, is she crying again in the chair for the 3rd time, or the 3rd time can she hold her
The 3rd time she can hold her. I think the 3rd time hold her. The dad today asked about grandparents. And we were like, yeah, grandparents are just grandparents. If you can suggest, I always say Lori said, because then it's on me and not on their kids who are so lucky to have a grandparent that will be a caregiver. But so sometimes that's out the door if it's a grandparent. Yeah.
Do you recommend this method or more of the eat right after waking up and play eventually?
So I like eat, play, and sleep, but it's really hard to talk families into that. It's just really hard. And the other thing about that is if the people who want their kids to have a bottle right before they go to bed, they're not going to do that anyway. So yes, it would be ideal if they would eat and be up and play and then go to bed. But then they're still going to be holding their children or rocking them, like that's probably a rock to sleep situation. Then there just aren't, it's just because of our population. I don't know if it's our population or not. I just don't find people that literally just go I just remember putting my kids in bed and they would go to sleep after we did cry it out. They were wide awake. And I just don't feel like that ever happens now. That's just not what we hear. Do you guys hear that? Yeah, I don't hear that at all. Did somebody else have a question here? Okay. All right. All right. The rockers. So they do not have to give up rocking. And I like to tell families that you do not have to give up rocking. Just find a different time of the day to do it. This is when I insert book reading routine here. Because they can sit in a chair downstairs and rock and read a book and still have that yummy snuggly time with their children, with their babies, with their kids. And they don't have to be rocking them to sleep. It's the only time I get to hold them. It's the only time they're still. Well, let's try a different let's find a different time. Walk through their day, see what we can't change. So if they are rocking to sleep, if they're doing this, rocking chest to chest this way, I often suggest moving this kind of sideline up and down. For one, the transfer into a crib is easier. It also is less snugly warm, and it's less of a, like as you transition them, it's just one step closer to how they're going to sleep anyway. They're not going to sleep upright on a parent all night long. That's not how we place them in a crib. So put them this way. And same thing, you're gonna less and less awake. So if families are rocking their kids, they're gonna move them out this way so that they're tummy up, and you're gonna be able to watch them. They're gonna be drowsy, their eyes are gonna be, they get heavy, stand up, move to the crib when they're heavy, put their child in, rub their tummy, rub their back if they roll over, all those things. I had a dad that said he could put his hand in the crib. He got to the point where he could stick his hand in the crib and the child would fall asleep, and then he rolled up a ball of socks and put the socks on, and he could walk out of the room. I was like, that's brilliant. But it's the same thing. But the routine needs to happen in the bedroom. And I always tell, like, if there was a football game on, we were feeding our kids out in front of the football game. That's just what we did. But 90% of the time, our routine was in the bedroom, because that's where they sleep. That's where it should happen. So, I just think that's really important. I know it's. All right. Sorry. Next. Okay. Anybody have kids that are trying to get out of their bed, that have been in their bed? Yeah. So, I like to move the child and the parent to whatever room that child's going to sleep in. Or if this family is going to have the child in a bed in their room, that parent's going to move from their bed in the bedroom to whatever mattress that child's going to sleep on the floor in their bedroom. You're giving the signal. You're not, for a week, they're going to do that. So the family's either going to put a mattress on the floor in the nursery that's never been used. They're going to move in there and they're going to just put a mattress on the floor. They're going to fall this far, 4 inches, if they're going to fall off that mattress. So you're going to, a parent and the child are going to move to that new sleep surface, and they're just going to sleep there for a week. Just like they always did when they're co-sleeping. They're going to move to a new mattress, new location, and sleep there for a week. Because that child then knows, oh, I'm fine, I still have my parents. We're just going to sleep here instead. You're making it secure for them initially in that new bed and the new sleep surface. And then you're going to encourage the parent to sit up. I have a mom that took 6 weeks to go from laying flat in the bed with her child, 6 weeks, to moving to 2 pillows. She wanted him to fuss none. It's who she was. She got to choose. I didn't have to do it. But that's how slow process she wanted to do it. I suggest 3 or 4 nights, depending on the reaction from the child. So after they've slept in that bed with the new parent, in the new place, then they start working on sitting up next to the bed. I sometimes suggest a visual, like a Band-Aid or a little ACE wrap. Oh, I have an owie, I have to sit up. Kids are visual, toddlers are visual. It's kind of nice. Why not put a Band-Aid on? And then they just slowly, then they get out of the bed. You sit next to the bed and you help pat them to sleep. The other thing I like to do is practice leaving the room. when they are settled and the parents are in the bed and everybody's quiet and laying there, they're going to then say, oh, I always say the bathroom because kids are always in the bathroom with their parents. But you can, I hate to say, I'm going to check on the baby. We don't want to build resentment of the baby. So the bathroom is good. I have to go do the dishes, whatever they want to say. But I feel like the child needs to be able to visualize where the parent's saying they're going. So if you say I have to go to the bathroom, I'll be right back. So some kids need a transition item. Mom hands a scrunchie, hold this, I'll be right back. Literally, the parent's going to get up. They're gonna go in the hallway. They're gonna count to 3 and they're gonna come right back in. Typically, that toddler is waiting for them in the doorway and they're gonna say, good job, you waited. Because we want it to be happy. We don't want any tantrums right before we go to bed. So they didn't really wait, but we're gonna teach them how to wait. So, and then we're gonna say, good job, you waited, we're gonna get them back into bed. They're gonna get used to the fact, parents are then telling them they're leaving, but they're also telling them they're coming back. So they're doing 2 things that they said they were gonna do, because this is not a time we're gonna stress a child out. So then what you do is extend the time. Families go and they, like the adjoining bathroom, they go flush the toilet and come back. Kids are gonna listen for that. So then when they come back, they're gonna, what we're doing is establishing wait time and independence in their bed. And then when we increase that, they're gonna lay there and they're tired, and guess what's gonna happen? They're gonna fall asleep. So if they fall asleep, let's say if you do that method and you're out for 5 minutes or 10 minutes and the child's fallen asleep, when they call you in the middle of the night, you have to go back in and help them because they don't really know how to go to sleep by themselves yet. So we're working on that. So, but then you're just gonna literally move yourself closer to the door and closer to the door of the bedroom and move out. I had a little girl that had started having night terrors, was a great sleeper and was scared to be in her bedroom, and mom moved a recliner in the bedroom and then slowly moved the recliner out of the bedroom. And as long as the little girl could see the end of the recliner in her doorway, she thought mom was in the chair and that little girl would sleep. It's like, that is brilliant. That was good. I will steal that. Any questions about that, getting somebody to move out? I have no idea what time it is. Yeah.
So, kids that are falling asleep great on their own in their own bed, but then are waking up in the night,
Okay.
like consistently. So, you know, some families struggle with that and some families are like, I don't even care. They fell asleep in their bed. I just bring them to my bed. You know, they're like, June.
Yeah.
I don't know what.
So if they're okay with that, I would just make sure you tell them that that is not what the Academy of Pediatrics recommends first.
Yeah.
And then if they're fine with it, that's totally on them.
Yeah.
I can't like. It just becomes, if that's what their family chooses, or if that's what their family has to do out of necessity, then I'm not gonna touch that. I really only touch it if it's affecting other places in other areas of their development. And if the parents are really wanting them out of it.
So if they're really wanting them to just stay in their own bed, I'm going to have to tell them, we're going to have to do, like, you have to be prepared to be awake in the middle of the night.
Yeah, it goes back to that first slide.
Right.
They have to change their behavior if they want their child's behavior to change.
Right.
And I don't know that I'd say it like that. I can write it on a slide really well. That's not how I would say it. But I mean, that's a conversation to be had. These families that want their kids to sleep all night long, but aren't gonna do anything about it. I mean, sometimes I'm like, it sounds really tough. So here's what I would do, and I'll check back in 2 weeks, and if you've decided to try it, great, I'll come back and we can walk through it. If you have decided to wait, that's fine too. I'll come back when you're ready. I mean, I just think I would tell them, we'll hit that when you're ready to, yeah, because they have to be up.
When is bed sharing safe?
When is bed sharing safe?
I just always thought it was like over intensity. Because we have so many kids that just crawl into their parents' bed.
So, it's not safe.
Ever?
Well, I mean, how hard do we sleep, and are we gonna roll over onto that child? And that child sleeps hard and we have then rolled on top of the child. then what happens? So, did my kids sleep in my bed sometimes? Yes, not very often. I mean, when you go to a hotel, you're gonna share a bed with your kid, right? You're not gonna get 3 hotel rooms because you have 4 kids. So there's gonna be some of that, but I would tell you not. I mean, I would tell you it's not safe. Obviously, the older they get, but still, if everybody's a really hard sleeper, it's scary. I dread the day that I hear this. I did just hear a story. But I dread the day that I hear a story that a child has passed away because they were bed sharing and somebody went over. It scares me. But our families do it all the time. I talk families through it all the time. Like, what are they gonna do? I mean, I think Laura and I had a family that the baby had to go to the emergency room in an ambulance at 6 days old. And so they had, what was it, a DockATot that they put in the bed. And the baby slept there because they were scared to death. Is that safe? No, but also they wanted their baby to be alive and so there's just things, right? There are situations that are not going to be great that we are going to see that I'm never going to teach. I'm never going to say, it's fine. I'm not going to do that. So it's tricky. I mean, it's hard. It's just because there's so many variables. I mean, when your kid's 8 and have a nightmare and they climb into your bed, probably no harm, no foul. But there's also this other caveat, is your bed a king size bed or is it a twin bed? It's hard. It's a great question, but it's hard. Yeah.
Do you recommend not like baby wearing naps? And is it that 4-month range that you'd say we need to take naps in them? And during the day in a bassinet now, or is it even earlier?
Baby sharing naps are not good because if we fall asleep and the baby goes like this.
Oh, sorry, baby wear.
Yeah,
Like a
I'm talking about yes. The parent needs to be awake if they're wearing a baby for a nap.
Yeah.
Parent needs to be awake. I mean, that's hard, right? What was the other question?
But
Sorry.
when you recommend them transitioning from, like, I'm just gonna wear them for all their naps to naps in crib or naps in bassinet?
Yeah, in my head, so 4 months, for sure, I would do it earlier than that.
Right.
Even if they're napping, if they're in the bassinet or the pack and play high where you are, not in their bedroom at 3 months old, that's fine, because they're gonna nap for 20 minutes and you're moving on but as you can tell that there's a little bit of consistency happening with some of those naps, I would be moving them to wherever their sleep space is, which ideally would be in the parents' room at a different sleep. Yeah.
Talk to me about a few modifications that you might make for kids on the spectrum.
Yeah. I often have. I send them back to their pediatrician, back to their pediatrician, back to their pediatrician, I'll be honest, but I also, if parents are. Going to their pediatrician and might need a sleep study. If their pediatricians are typically not going to just send kids in for a sleep study, which by the way, the wait is 6 months out. At this point, I mean, families can get in earlier on a cancellation list. But the pediatricians are going to want to know that families have done some sleep training first. They really are. If your family goes in and says, we've had great success, I've had great success sending families to say, call your pediatrician, when's your next appointment, call the nurse line, and they call them and they say, we've just started with infant toddler, and sometimes they'll say, okay, try what they've suggested for a month and call us back, and then they are on the sleep study list. Oftentimes they don't like to just, because they don't know parents' behavior at night. And even if parents saying, well, they just won't sleep. Well, they don't know what's happening. And so oftentimes they wait. But for our families who have had some You guys have talked to them about it, all those things. It's important to have them share with their pediatrician that they're doing some sleep training. And here's what they tried, and it's still not working, and they're up. Yeah, that was a great question.
Lori, what are your, like, what do you suggest when they bring up like this new or something? Like, what is your opinion of that?
Flat sleep surface.
I just, so, if you're in the room, it's kind of like the baby swings, right? So, oh, you probably don't know what a baby swing. You're too young, but it's like the baby swings, like when they're little, when they're itty bitty and you're in the same room and you're on the same floor with them and you're gonna put them in the swing to sleep, fine. But they should not be in there all night long. And as they start to get longer naps, longer than 3 months dysregulated, all over the place naps, they should be sleeping on a flat surface. That's kind of my takes on that.
One that does music and moves them.
Yeah.
Back to sleep. It's not flat.
Oh, it is flat.
It's not, it moves them when they cry.
Oh, the mama
The
room.
number is the one that.
Yeah.
The snooze the one they're stuck in, take that straight. Yeah, that's one that they
Rock
had.
rock them. And when they cry, it rocks them back down.
I don't, well. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But then how are they gonna transition that child to a crib?
Right, that's what I'm wondering.
And I'll be honest, so our kids initially did not sleep well. We had one vibrating bouncy seat when our kids were infants and they had their nights and days mixed up, and Dave and I would end up each on a couch with the baby. And if I woke up and if the bouncy seat was empty with a vibrating bouncy seat, knew I was getting an hour's sleep. I mean, it's desperate times. We were desperate. We were so tired. And so we got a second one, but then to transition to the crib, it was terrible. And I did all the wrong things. I literally put the child in the vibrating bouncy seat in the crib. Kid you not. And then I would turn it off. And then I would go, but then I just transition him, right? And then I put that smelly thing from the bouncy seat and I attached it. It was hard. I sewed it essentially over the crib because I'm like, if this is what you need, this is what you're getting. But it was like safe bedding. I had made it into bedding essentially at that point. So, I mean, been there, done that. And my kids are okay, but I hate to recommend, so this new, first of all, I would hate this. I mean, I guess it's like swaddling, but, it's not a natural. It's just gonna be harder to transition them to the bed that's not gonna have a device on it that's gonna rock them back to sleep. That child is not learning how to put themselves to sleep. That machine is doing that. So,
How would you navigate the conversation about bed sharing with a family who's maybe choosing to bed share for cultural reasons?
I think we need to, it's a great question. And I would just say, I understand that that's what your family has chosen, and I just need to share with you the safety risks of that.
Okay.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
That part's hard.
Right.
I'll come to tell whoever. Those toddlers who will not stay in their beds, we literally, I like to say, make some rules, help the family make some rules. The rule is, it's time to stay in your bed, and they talk. That's a question I get a ton. They just sit there and talk to you forever. The rule is, it's time for you to be laying in your bed. You can tell me that story in the morning. The rule is, I say over and over, yeah. When they start to crawl out. The crib needs to be, when they start standing up, that the thing needs to be, like, the cribs need to be on their lowest level. And then if they're starting to climb out, they need to be out. And it becomes really tricky when they're really little and they're too little to be out of their crib. It's a whole different situation. And then I feel like we problem solve through it with a family like that who's culturally co-sleeping in a bed. We just kind of walk our way through it and let them know the safety features of that, why it's safe and not safe, and move from there. It's hard when they're too little. All right, so wakers in the middle of the night. Oh, I don't have that up there. Okay, so pacifiers, I'll just walk through it. When kids are waking up in the middle of the night, they need to revisit the sleep and eat patterns. What are the calories? What did they eat? Did they really not eat dinner because they didn't like it? Do they need a high protein, high fat snack like our dietitian says before they go to bed? You know, those kinds of things. Do they need that? Maybe. So if they start to wake in the middle of the night and wake and wake and wake, we need to check out why. Are they crying or are they fussing? If they're fussing in the middle of the night and we're racing in a second flat, we're not teaching them how to put themselves back to sleep. Are they crying or are they fussing? I love that question. Is the environment the same? Did we rock them to sleep and then we expect them to go back to bed in their crib because that's what they're supposed to do? Did they have a pacifier and they threw the pacifier out and need the pacifier? Hated the passing game. I played the passing game. I like to line the crib with all the pacifiers. I love to teach the kids to help them when they're old enough, motorically capable enough to help them find their own pacifier and stick it in their mouths, because that's what we want them to do in the middle of the night. I had a family that he was probably 18-ish months old and they finagled one of those Tupperware containers and it held all his pacifiers in the corner of his crib. And that's where they kept him, and he learned how to grab it and stick a new one in. But I love lining the bed with that. They have to go back to the pre-established routine. So if they're doing rocking and putting in bed barely awake, they need to do that in the middle of the night, every time they wake up. If a child has had a bad middle of the night and they've been up 4 times because you're doing this new routine, they do not get to sleep till 10. They have to get up at 7. You have erased the whole thing. What happens then is that they get into this chunk sleeping, and that's really hard to break. Because then they sleep 4 hours here and 4 hours here and 4 hours here, and that's hard to break. They're fussier then than they would if you woke them up at 7 a.m. to start the day and try to get on that nice regular routine. So the other thing is, if they typically nap an hour and a half, they need to get up at an hour and a half, even if they had a bad night, because then you're pushing everything back. If that 4 or 5 wake window, if you let them just sleep till 4 o'clock, they're not going to sleep until 9 o'clock if you're following that routine of establishing a sleep schedule. All right, ferritin, melatonin. Let's talk about melatonin first. No TV, no phone, no iPad an hour before bedtime, because the blue light inhibits the natural production of melatonin. We all know that's a thing. I fall asleep with TV on every night. It's fun. All right, so this, I think I saw. Oh, that's funny. I have to start this video. It's subtle, but this is Miss B. Her mom took a video for me. Watch her move. Oh. Here we go. This is a child with low ferritin. So she's sleeping on her stomach. She's asleep, but she does this all night long.
The
She was doing
video
that
is
all
not-
night. Oh, it's not moving up there? Oh. Okay. I don't know how to make that move up there. Anybody else? I don't
It's
know.
in presentation mode, I'm assuming.
Yeah, probably.
If you take it out of it and then click it.
I'll just pretend you can see. She is moving, like her twitching. Gets on hands and knees and almost rolls herself over and then stops for about 2 seconds and then twitches. And there's too many blankets in that bed, but she sleeps face forward. It's why she's in her parents' room, because she choked herself. She was face down and not breathing one night. And she happened to cough. And then her parents were like, so it's a good thing she was in her room, but she has low ferritin. It looks very different. The kids who are rotating in their cribs all night long, they're in a different position all night long. It presents itself as restless leg syndrome. Kids that are up randomly in the middle of the night for hours at a time, who are not doing chunk sleeping, that's an indicator of low ferritin. Kids who take an hour and a half to fall asleep, even though you know they're exhausted. The kids who will lay obediently in their bed, and parents, they're like, I'm in there for an hour and a half, and they're just laying there and they're not asleep. That's a kid I'm gonna have to have their ferritin levels checked. And now Dana's telling us that we should have the whole CBC panel done. Is that good?
That would be ideal. you want me to elaborate on this?
Sure.
Okay, so getting a ferritin level is all well and good. Because that shows us the iron stored. But if the ferritin is low and the hemoglobin and hematocrit and the platelets and the like cell volume size are normal, that's one level of treatment. But if a bunch of that stuff is really low, in addition to the ferritin being low, that could lead to a different type of treatment. So like they're always probably, unless it's like critically low, they'll always start with an oral supplement. But if those numbers also don't come up, then it might lead to them seeing like a hematologist for infusions. I've not had anybody get a transfusion yet, but I've had a couple of kids lately getting infusions, or at least they're in the discussions of that coming up. I feel like I've just seen a lot of really anemic kids lately, and if you only have half the story, you don't get the proper treatment.
Aren't got a transfusion,
Which one?
Leon.
Oh, that's right, you did get a transfusion. Yeah.
I just, so, and like Danny was saying, it's one, you have to have your ferritin levels checked, it has to be a blood draw. And if they're gonna get their blood drawn anyway, it's, just do it all. Just
And
do
there's
it.
the CBC level, and they're in like an iron level is different than a ferritin. So you get like the full, you can just ask for a full iron panel, and that would trigger all of it.
And so and if you're gonna send a parent, I would also, because if they're going to do a full iron panel, they very well might not check ferritin.
Right.
Families have to specifically ask for ferritin to be checked. So
And then
those of you,
follow up,
Oh, yeah.
because like, who was I with? I was with Heather. And we were talking about the kids' levels, and I was just like, do you have the information? And the mom was like, yeah, it's on the portal, and it had been like 3 or 4 weeks since they had the labs drawn, and her hemoglobin was a 7. And that's like borderline scary. And her hematocrit was also very low. So if the mom hadn't called, they probably wouldn't have gotten a response, because it just fell through the cracks. And now she's seeing a hematologist. So just good to follow up.
yeah. I mean, I've had families, my little Henry, I walked in and they were like, we cannot get him to sleep, and they sent me a video. This was, gosh, probably 8 years ago. He was 18 months, really tall, in a baby swing, in the family room, with the lights on and the TV going with the baseball game on, because he doesn't fall asleep anyway, and they can't leave him in his room by himself because it's not safe. Would not sleep in a crib. Would not. They would go into this makeshift closet area with a crib in it, and he would blood curdle scream. I was like, yeah, that's not where he's gonna sleep. So we literally found the family a mattress. They made the room safe. It had all soft things and all whatever. And the dad would go in the room on the mattress on the floor when he would wake up in the middle of the night. And the dad would sleep-ish, and the little boy would be kind of wandering around his room because he's laying there. It took him an hour and a half to fall asleep, and then he'd be up for an hour in the middle of the night. Once his ferritin levels got up, some of it happened, and they waited for a very long time. I saw the mom years later, and she said, we finally did it when he was like 3.5, and we're really sorry we didn't do it before that. So it's a family that never did, but they made the room safe and all the things. But I was like, this is how you want him to sleep? I mean, he's like, his legs were, it was like mid-thigh, and his legs are hanging off the swing. They were just desperate. So it's a real thing. Ferritin is a real thing. But once again, calling the doctor, if they're sleep training first, if they're doing it in conjunction with the blood draw, pediatricians are way more willing to do that. It could take 3 to 6 months for those ferritin levels to get up. I always have parents if the levels of, say they're at a 7 and they're at a 10 after 3 months, I have them call the pediatrician again and ask about dosage, because they probably need to be on more, or how are they taking it? There's all these rules around it. So what is exactly what I tell parents. There's all these rules around taking the iron. You need to ask your pediatrician, because I don't want to be in charge of dosage. I will send them back to their pediatrician. So, because milk has to be not an hour on either side. Yeah, I just say there's all kinds of rules, because I don't want to be the one to tell them what the rules are. I want their doctor to do that. Any questions? Any other questions? There's some of the resources. Kids who are on melatonin, I guess I have one more thought. Kids who pediatrician put on melatonin, I would have the pediatrician, I would follow back up. Children's Mercy used to say for kids on the autism spectrum, in particular, if you start melatonin to teach them how to go to sleep, they used to say 2 weeks every night, 20 minutes before bedtime, and the third week every other night, so that you're weaning them off of it. Because it teaches a new sleep cycle. You're gonna teach them how to go to sleep, but you don't want them on it forever. Now I have pediatricians that keep them on it for a very long time for whatever reason. But that's another reason I have parents go check on that again, because we make melatonin naturally in our bodies. So if we're on it the whole time, then our body gets used to needing that level. So any of those kinds of things, I give them my little, this much knowledge and send them back to their doctor. It's just safe. All right. Have a good day.